What's up, guys? In this episode, we have the owner of Grease Busters, a Denver-based grease pumping company, and he's here to talk about everything you want to know about running a grease pumping business. And if you have a septic or a portable toilet business, why you should add this service to your business. All right, let's jump right in. All right, let's start with the basics. So what exactly is grease pumping and who needs this service?
Sure, Matt. So grease pumping is essentially the service of servicing commercial kitchens for their grease traps. And what grease traps are is a device to capture fats, oils, and greases before they hit our main sewer line. So think about any commercial facility that has a kitchen. So the addressable market's very large. Our customers range from restaurants, schools, hospitals, senior living facilities, and would love to get into jail contracts. But nonetheless, these are devices that are in place at all these facilities, and they are required to be pumped so that we can protect and preserve our public sewer infrastructure.
That's awesome. I also heard that car wash could fall into this too.
Yes. So there's a little delineation between this. So car washes, oil, really any mechanic shop, golf courses, those are more, we commonly get that they're called grease interceptors, but really what they are is sand and grit pumping. Those are a little bit more nuanced in the sense of the reoccurring nature of it, but nonetheless, they do also need to get service. The equipment's a little different, and the disposal of it similar to the grease. And I think we'll jump into that later on what that disposal looks like and what challenges and opportunities there are. But yes, there is a component of similar types of devices that need to be serviced in the car wash and car mechanic shop, golf course industry.
So what kind of equipment is needed to pump grease?
So when I think about equipment you can, and I'm sure listeners will also understand, you can go very crazy into what equipment, or you can go to the most bottom, but fundamentally the equipment needed for grease trap services are a larger truck. So what our listeners those who focus on the septic industry will probably have a better fit because most grease traps start on an exterior standpoint at about 1,000 gallons, and they can go as large as 15,000 gallons. And then the inside ones are closer to 25 to 50 gallons. So when I think about our listeners and getting into this industry, the folks in the porta potty space, they're probably with smaller volume trucks. Those folks will probably better fit to start small with indoor grease traps. And then the septic folks will probably be very, probably ready to go to start doing grease trap servicing with their existing infrastructure.
A lot of our customers, that are in septic or portables, some of them dabble in this, but I think that, that's why it's so great to have you here. I think just getting kind of the full picture of, how they can add the service to their business. But let's kind of start with can you walk us through the workflow of pumping grease?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think maybe on a workflow standpoint, I'll talk with customers, right? Like the service call that comes in. There's a heavy component that majority of your customers are going to be commercial focused. So when we think about our listeners who are in the septic space, who are dealing with homeowners or, maybe some larger rural area commercial facilities, you definitely want to have some staffing that are well-versed in what a grease trap is, working with commercial clients, understanding their requirements in terms of insurance and all the good stuff that you think about on a admin-related standpoint. So that's one. And then two, really the workflow is, hey, you get a service call. And most of our customers are on a quarterly cadence. That being said, we do take will call services. We view that as an opportunity to showcase our service to our customers, help them out, fundamentally get their operation back going. And it's a way for us to get our foot in the door and create that reoccurring model for us. So that's on a sales component. Once that goes, we use ServiceCore, just like probably all the listeners. And what I'll do is schedule something on our calendar. I'll use the repeat function to kind of put the cadence that the customers desire to. And then we'll have one of our staff members. Sometimes I'd like to go as well to go and engage. Our staff members are well versed at this point, but usually an exterior grease trap will be 2 manhole covers with an inlet side and outlet side, similar to what a septic tank would look like. And there'll be fats and oils and greases on the top layer, and ideally some water in the bottom of it. Sometimes we come with grease traps that haven't been serviced in a while, and it's just all grease, and it's a lot of hard work. The smell is something that can put a lot of people away. So we try to schedule these in early mornings or afternoon times when, say it's, a local, a coffee shop or something, right? We know that volume of customer base is going to be lower post noon. And so we'll try to come during those times when it's convenient for a customer, and we'll service it. And really, I think the challenges which we see in these industries is, one, communication, 2, logistics of really organizing and not being in a busy area. And then from there, it's really the same process that you may follow on a septic device. We do have some specialized tools to break up the grease, which can be a challenge in certain points, but pricing is obviously based off of that. And from there, really take it to a disposal site. And I think from what listeners might want to consider is really investigating and researching what are your disposal sites. Many states have certain requirements of where to dispose of it. It's probably not where you're disposing your septic. Only few people take it. So understanding what that looks like, what the pricing is per gallon, and then doing market research and, pricing appropriately.
I'm glad you talked about the smell, because I think that's one thing that if you've never been around one, I think personally that the grease smells worse than any septic tank or any porta potty that's out there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And, being in this business, I interact with many other peers, whether it be in the septic world or the porta potty world. And we've definitely gotten feedback. We've had folks of drivers that come to us and they're like, I don't know how you guys do this. So I think that's boils down to ultimately finding the right staff that, are able to handle it. And over time, like anything, it doesn't, you get used to it. It's not a big deal, but really you want to keep your staff happy and make sure that they're good. And ironically enough, our staff actually do not like doing septic, and they actually like grease. So, it's kind of contrary. A lot of people are thinking the opposite. So it's just all staffing and kind of finding the right fit.
Yeah. You change your mindset to it smells like money. Yes. And then you put on your job description, must not have a sense of smell. And you're good.
That's exactly right. Or, get your guys to, or ladies to really be like, hey, look, it's a needed service, and you're a critical component to really protecting and preserving our sewer infrastructure. And I think sharing that and knowing that we are critical workers in the industry, I think really gets people motivated. And it is the fact, right? So or else our sewer infrastructure can collapse, and you don't want that.
No, we don't. What about, this is interesting because a lot of our customers, those that are in septic and those that do porta potty rental, they're used to dealing with customers on the construction side, residential side, but going after, restaurants or other businesses that would need this kind of service. Can you speak a little bit about that, about making relationships there?
Yeah, a lot of it is, like any business, a lot of hard work in the beginning, and really, obviously, all the whole time. But these relationships, the sales cycle typically takes anywhere from 6 to 8 months, maybe even longer, in certain larger multi-site contractors. Really, from a list for the listeners, I think have a hat of, I want to help these people. These are people part of my community that feed us, that serve us in terms of hospitals, and understanding that there is a certain sense of importance and urgency when those emergency calls do come into place. Knowing that, and then really the relationships come from engaging and offering those services, right? Most likely these customers have a vendor in place. And the way I've approached and what's worked for us is really just being helpful to them, whether I'm getting something out of it or not, but just saying, hey, we're here for you. If there's any time that your current vendor can't make it, or you need an emergency call, we're there. And usually that has won us work afterwards, just really being communicative and responsive.
You mentioned that the typical cycle for this might be quarterly. How do you structure your contracts? Do you put certain restaurants or certain relationships where they might need it more frequently? Are you putting that like, hey, we're going to do this once a month, once whatever?
Yeah, it varies case by case, volume of production from the facility itself, the size of the grease trap, et cetera. A lot of our exterior grease traps that are, starting anywhere from 1,000 gallons and going beyond, they're on a quarterly cadence. It just makes sense. They have a lot of capacity. Our facilities that have indoor grease traps that are 25 to 50 gallons, those tend to be monthly or every 2 months. And so it really depends on cadence by cadence. A lot of messaging to your customer, reading through them. What I would encourage everyone that's listening is, really let the customer decide. Obviously, from a business perspective, you want it to be as much reoccurring as possible. But you want to be in your best interest of the customer. So let the customer decide. And if you know that this needs more, they will also recognize it. And part of our model is that we send before and after pictures of the service that's being done. And we use it through ServiceCore, and our staff put it in there. And that gives the biggest proof that all you need for the customer to decide whether cadence needs to be more. And so let them come to that conclusion rather than being very salesy. I think that has been really helpful for us.
You mentioned the special regulations potentially in each area, I assume, is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah.
But the disposal, since this would be a different place to dispose of, can you say more about that?
Yes. Before I get into disposal, I'll also talk to kind of through requirements or legal requirements of being a hauler and whatnot. So in the state of Colorado, the state wants most of these devices to be serviced at a minimum of twice a year. However, the local water authority at each county level or whatever, their rules supersede the state. So and this is why I say, hey, it's not just go take your septic truck and get to it. You really want to be educated and get familiar with the local authority, their regulations, and their disposal. And so just understanding what the city wants or the county wants will help you determine the cadence. A lot of our cities that we work with, they actually want the quarterly service. So it's an easy sell for us when, hey, there's regulation in place. So that's in terms of kind of the service component. On a disposal standpoint, this is a lot of work that you'll just kind of need to do for the listeners, is really figure out what disposal options there are for you. It's very likely that the place that you're dumping septic will probably not take grease. And so understanding where's that site and then kind of planning your logistics through it. There's multiple ways of navigating that. If it's close enough to your shop, great, you can get to dump every day. If it's not, there's ideas of putting frac tanks at your yard, disposing of that waste, and then having a larger hauling operation to take to the actual facility. So it varies state by state and local by local, but the biggest challenge is to figure out where these sites are.
And this is going to be different for everyone, but can you speak about the disposal fees just so our audience can get an idea of how different it might be?
Yeah. And I think it's a good example for us is there's really only 3 spots and like these major metro areas for us in Colorado to dump, and the pricing varies, right? 2 of the facilities, they charge for the full truckload, and they're about 7 cents, but they're paid for the full truckload. So you're in the best incentive to maximize what's in your truck before you get there, because you're getting charged for the full load. Whereas another facility that's here, they charge by what's in your tank, in your gallon, and you give them your manifest forms. And they charge about 12 cents. So ultimately, if you do the math, it's all the same, right? If you take a half a load of a truck that's charging you 7 cents, the whole load still costs you 12 cents, vice versa as the other person. So really it depends on a lot of logistics with everyone. The listeners are probably all in tune with. We're in a density and volume based business. And so you really want to maximize your volume and, try to reduce your windshield time and downtime at the dump site.
What about, what people can charge for this? And obviously different jobs, different sizes, but on average, how do you charge for this?
Yeah. So I have a flat fee for really anything that's under 1,000 gallons. And this can be market specific. And I think what I would encourage the listeners is to go do market research. Really market research can be anywhere from going to your local, restaurant and asking them, what are they paying today? And you'd be surprised on how many folks would be willing to share their invoice and see if you can beat them. But it's the same model as you would be doing a septic. It's going to be price per gallon based, and it's unit economics. That's fundamentally, but we have flat fees for anything for a certain threshold, which I said 1,000 gallons. And that's really the cost of having a very expensive truck and expensive CDL drivers, staff to get to that location. And so that'll be that. And then anything beyond that, it's by price per gallon. And we're at market rates, and we're just trying to be competitive. And, there's instances where we think in a revenue generation standpoint or sales standpoint, we get a contract with let's say one customer with 90 sites. Well, would be happy to give them a discount just to make sure that we get that account and keep our business moving.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Speaking of competition, what's the competition like in the grease space? Because you could be in an area where there's lots of portable toilet companies or lots of septic companies, and you're in a major metro in Denver. But what's it like?
Again, it's going to be nuanced, right? Market by market, but I think it can be competitive. That being said, it's service. Everyone's going to be similar price to you, maybe a couple cents below or higher, but service wins every time. So a lot of hard work and service, and I think fundamentally the way I view it, there's probably a couple large national players. And then really it's a fragmented market. And so there's opportunity to grow through organic, good service. And there's also opportunity to do acquisitions, right? If it makes sense to go and do an acquisition of, a mom and pop player that's ready to retire, who has existing infrastructure and existing accounts that you can use as your base and then go from there, it's definitely an opportunity.
One thing I forgot to ask you earlier was, how long does the typical job take?
So that also varies, right? Obviously by gallons, the complexity, where it's located. We have had jobs that are done as small and as fast as 15 minutes to jobs that has taken us 14 hours. So it varies by complexity, the size of gallons. What are you doing? Where are you? So, plan for that. Pricing is obviously included in that. But ultimately, as everyone's an owner or operator here, they understand if you're hitting your daily metrics, might as well spend 14 hours as long as you're hitting your daily target.
But speaking of dailies, what's your, on average, you just shared a wide range, but on average, how many grease jobs are you doing a week?
On average, we're probably doing about 32 grease traps, 30 to 40 grease traps per week. The way I really look at it is about 4 to 5 grease traps per staff member. And then, by truck and volume, et cetera. Sometimes we'll have one staff that only has one job, but that one job hits her target and they spend about 8 hours, right? So, again, varies, but let's say if it's an average base, you're talking about 4 to 5 per day.
What do you wish you knew about grease pumping before you started this business?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I think what I wish I knew was really that the sales cycle is very long in this process, and that it's not necessarily like, a porta potty or a septic business where, there's construction going on. The guy needs a porta potty and he needs it now, or she needs it now. And so that sales cycle can be very quick. Same with septic tanks. Usually an owner or a homeowner that's like, hey, I need my septic tank pumped. The understanding that, market dynamics play a part in this, right? So if it's a net new restaurant, or a restaurant that went out of business and someone else has taken the lease, you're probably in good shape to take that customer as long as you get that lead or they call you first. But really, if you're trying to switch out an existing vendor, it will take a little while. And so I think that what I wish I knew is, hey, have a little bit of patience and understand that the sales is a very difficult but fun component of this business.
I think you guys, as you were saying, I was thinking of a question, like you guys started your business after COVID, but I wonder if COVID created an opportunity for grease pumping companies to go to those restaurants that might have, like, they're not going to be doing grease pumping if they weren't open for a certain amount of time. Right. And maybe being able to say like, hey, maybe some of those grease pumping companies, they went into retirement.
Right. And that's something that I think about every day, right? And I think everyone's an owner operator here. They understand what customer diversity looks like. And so as I think about our customers, I like to have a little bit of diversity in end markets. Let's think about certain end markets that, COVID or not, have to be in business, right? I mean, think to yourself, a senior living facility or a hospital. Those are still in business. Those are still operating. And so having that diversity kind of mitigates some of that risk. Yeah. Are you going to fundamentally lose a little bit of portion of your business? Sure. But can you keep the lights on? Yes. And that's what the goal is, right? We're all trying to increase the survivability of our business. And that's what we're trying to do as well.
If someone is already running a septic or a porta potty business today, and they are listening to this and they're like, yep, I want to add grease, what's the number one reason they should?
The number one reason they should, in my opinion, is really it's nearly not as capital intensive as porta potties. I'll tell you that. You don't need to buy more porta potties. But two, all of these folks probably have the existing infrastructure in terms of vacuum trucks. And what I really think would get business owners to get excited about this is that there is a reoccurring component to this. Whereas, a porta potty is, a project-based life cycle. So once the project starts, you're there, but there's going to be an end to that. And similar to a septic tank, where septic tank gets serviced, you're probably not coming back out there for 3 to 4 years. Whereas in the grease business, it's very likely you're going to be there at least 4 times a year, or at the minimum 2 times a year. And the way I look at it as well is, if restaurants and hospitals, schools are not doing well, we got bigger problems. And I think, that's something that, there's risk involved, but there's bigger problems that we'll probably need to figure out.
Some of our portable and septic companies have had challenges hiring CDL drivers and retaining CDL drivers. What's your experience been?
Like everyone, I've also had my challenges. I'm fortunate and blessed to have a really good team now. And, really, I think it's identifying talent that wants to build a career and not necessarily just a job out of this, and kind of recognizing this is a very niche, specialized trade that's very much needed. So there is job security. So really a lot of staff that I've been able to get is through the word of mouth, folks understanding that we're a growing business and we have a good culture. That's helped us gain and attain our staff. But, don't get me wrong, there's always challenges in any staffing in any of these industries. And I think it's just identifying the right talent, those specifically with, good driving records, understand that you are driving a vehicle that weighs a lot of weight, especially with a lot of liquid in it, and, being safe. And then also, these aren't just on the road trucking type jobs or, where you're primary driving, there's a service component to it. So really finding staff that have that customer service attitude, customer first service attitude, and understand that they're going to see these customers not just one time, but probably 4 times a year, because these routes are planned back to them. And so just having a positive attitude when they come, and even though it's a smelly job and people are probably like holding their nose while you're doing it, just having a smile and understanding they're doing something important.
This has been awesome. Lots of great wisdom. What's one thing you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, I think really, like with anything and with any of the businesses that everyone's in, hard work wins, and start service first wins, and treating the customer as if they're your own, and not necessarily being predatory, but really more, of a helping nature. I think, everyone's destined to kind of be successful as long as they have that attitude of willing to put in the work for it.
Well said. Really want to thank you so much for being our guest today.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And thank you for having us and sharing a little bit. And, really thank you for having ServiceCore. It's been a very great product for us. We've enjoyed it. It's made us a lot more efficient. So thank you for giving us the opportunity to use your software.
We're happy to hear that. And we'll see you on the next one.